Hey. So one of the things I quickly discovered when I got married was that my wife is the easiest person in the world to scare. Do any of you scare really easy? Anybody else? Okay. It's so easy with her. Like one time we were sitting in the bed, ready to go to sleep, and I looked at her sweetly, and I said, honey, I'm about to scare you. She was like, I said, hey, like that, and she just goes, blah! I told her I was going to scare her, and it still scared her, okay? And it was really awesome. But then I learned you don't do that because then your wife's not happy with you, and so I kind of stopped doing that. But she's really easy to scare. I don't know how scared you get about things. Maybe you're easily scared, some of you. There are things that are worth being scared of. Some people have weird pets, like hamsters. Does anybody have a hamster? Anybody? Fish. That's kind of a boring pet. Some people have weird pets that are actually kind of scary. Okay. Is anybody scared of snakes? Are y'all scared of snakes? Are you scared of snakes? Okay. Oh, wait. Let's see. Okay. It's totally fake. Okay, that was just a joke. Okay. Just to see if they would be scared down here. Okay. Now, if this was a real snake, I wouldn't even be touching it, okay? It looks like a real snake, but it's not. A whole setup just for that. But yeah, sometimes you're scared of stupid things, right? Like snakes. For me, it's spiders, okay? I wouldn't even get a fake spider because that freaks me out just a little bit. But there's also, I found out, there's all these like terms for things that people are afraid of. Phobias, like for snakes, it's actually ophidiophobia or something weird like that. But I was just looking through, and people are afraid of bathing, okay, is on this list. Blutophobia, they should call it like stinkophobia. But anyways, bathing, belly buttons, like I don't know how that works when they take off their shirt. Go! Okay, just freaking out. There's one, baldness is on here, bald people, okay? So peladophobia. So I don't know, like if they have a bald person walks in the room, do they just go into a panic like breakdown? I saw earlier that people with hair is on here. So you got like the bald person and then like the person who's afraid of hair, and they're just like, okay, together that would be a great couple. There's just, it's insane, all the kind of stuff. Who is still maybe a little bit afraid of the dark? Anybody? You have a nightlight, okay? Some of you, okay? that has a phobia. It's called nyctophobia, okay? Then there's like heights, like you don't like roller coasters. That's probably a few of you. Acrophobia. For me, I was scared of, there's this one, it's called calagenophobia. It's the fear of beautiful women. Because I noticed this when I was growing up. If I wasn't attracted to a girl, I could talk to her like all day, no problem. Like one time me and a friend, we flirted with these girls that were working at a restaurant, and we got our meal free. We were like, yeah, that was awesome. We're like high-fiving each other because we flirted our way to a free meal. But I wasn't attracted to her, so it wasn't hard. But like as soon as this girl that I was attracted to, I was like, I didn't know what to say. Some of you, that's your term. You need to remember, I have calagenophobia because you can't talk to beautiful women. But there's a lot of different fears that people have, and that list is like 14 pages long with like this big font. It's just like crazy, all the different fears that people have. And so we've been in this series called Emoticontrol. Right, it's up there, Emoticontrol, because we need to control our emotions, not let our emotions control us. And you might can kind of figure out what emotion we're going to be talking about. Because God wants us to be happy and successful. But sometimes the wrong emotions will keep us from being happy and successful. And so tonight I want to talk to you about fear. Because fear is one of the things that if we let it, it will completely take away your joy, your happiness, and just steer you in the wrong direction. Now, I know a lot of guys would say, I'm not afraid of anything. Here's my fear, okay? I'm not afraid of anything. And I get that, okay, we're not afraid. They usually say that right before they do something really stupid, though, like, I'm not afraid, and his arm's like broken sideways. I should have been afraid. But they're not afraid of anything. But fear is something that if you let it stay in your life, will hurt you. And there's two big things that fear does, okay? Here's the first one. Fear steers, okay? Like, think about it like this. Like, think of like a steering wheel, okay? Like on a car, okay? It turns and the car goes. It steers, okay? Now, fear is like that. It can take your life in different directions, okay? It can steer your life this way or that way and take you down different directions maybe than you wanted to go. Now, not all fear is bad. Sometimes it helps you make good decisions. When I was about 1 year old, I don't remember, but I was told, okay, I was adorable. And I was sitting on the floor, and I was playing with toys, and a scorpion, how does that say this? Scorpion, okay, comes up, and it comes up to me, and I don't know to be afraid because I'm one. And so I pick it up. And what do all 1-year-olds do with something they pick up? Yeah, so I take this scorpion, and that I don't know how to say apparently, and I just go to put it in my mouth, and it stings me right here on the lip. So my dad says he was in the other room, and he just hears like screaming happen. So he runs in, and there's this this thing running away with the tail, and he just like killed it, with passion. And of course, I didn't know though that you should be afraid. Now, if I saw one now, I'd be like, "You're dead." Okay, I'm not touching you, but with my shoe. And so, but fear can be helpful in that way. But most of the time, the fear that we have takes us away from good things in our life. You've probably had a teacher or somebody say, no, don't give in to peer pressure. Have you heard that? The peer pressure, okay? You don't want to do the peer pressure. Now, this is the truth, okay? Peer pressure is this, okay? It's really fear pressure, okay? It's that what they're trying to tell you is don't let your fear of what other people are going to think change the way you behave. That's what it really is. Peer pressure is fear pressure, okay? So I'm not going to talk to you about peer pressure, but I'm going to talk to you about fear pressure and not letting fear control you. Look at your neighbor and say, stop pressuring me. Gosh. Yeah. Gosh. So I was thinking about those phobias, and I made up some of my own that some of you probably struggle with, okay? Here's some of my phobias. Get teased-ophobia, missing out-ophobia, laughed at-ophobia, being different-ophobia. Okay, now these are really stupid, but these are some of the exact same things that we actually deal with, I think, in our life, and they probably actually have some cool terms, but I made up my own like that because it's silly. But like, I remember I was like 11 or 12 years old, okay? 11, 12, I don't remember exactly. My parents had this rule. I'm not allowed to ride with teenagers, like 16-year-old drivers, which is probably a smart rule because most of them are stupid drivers. But you're not. You're great. But most everyone else is, okay? And so anyways, that was a rule. I wasn't allowed to ride with teenagers. And so I was hanging out with my friends at this like event thing, and we were at one side, and they were like, hey, let's drive over to the other side. And it was just like 2 minutes in a parking lot, right? But I knew I'm not allowed to ride in the car with teenagers, with people like that. And so all my friends are getting in the car, and I'm like, and there's just this feeling, because number one, I don't want to get grounded and in trouble and all that with my parents, and I like to honor my parents, right? But I don't want to be the one I didn't want to say, I'm not allowed to ride with you because I'm lame and my parents, I didn't want to say that, and I felt so uncomfortable. And I think that most of you have experienced that in your life. I know that for me, multiple times growing up, I was with some people and they started watching something, whether it was a movie or something online, that I did not want to watch because of what was in it, okay? It was really not a good thing to watch. And I didn't want to watch it, but as I'm sitting in the room with them, that feeling of, okay, I do not want to be the guy that says, guys, this is a bad movie, and we're not going to, why do I say it like that? I don't know. But I didn't want to be that guy, because that's what I felt like it would sound like if I was like, hey, I'd rather not watch this. In their ears, in my mind, it's, hey, guys, this is a bad movie, and I don't want to watch it, okay? And I was just so not wanting to be different. And that being different, I just wanted to be like a normal person, but like a Christian normal person, but I'm still normal. And so in those moments when I didn't want to do something and I did something. Now, many of you have done stuff, you've put stuff in your body, you've said things, you've gone places, you've done whatever because of pressure. Let's not call it peer pressure because that's stupid, but fear pressure because of the feeling of I don't want to just be different. I don't want to stand out. I don't want to be weird. I just want to kind of be a normal person. But then you've done things that you didn't want to do, and if you're honest with yourself, it was just because of a little bit of fear of what somebody would say. I probably should have put talking behind my back-ophobia, right? Because that's what you don't want. If you don't want to stand up and walk out of the room and then all go, oh my gosh, look at her. She's such a Christian-y girl, okay? You don't want to hear that. So you don't want that happening when you leave the room, and so we're afraid of those things, and we let fear decide what we do. Sometimes we let fear keep us from doing things. Some of you have had somebody tell you something that bad happened to them, and you wanted to say, can I pray with you? But before you could get the words out of your mouth, you were afraid to ask them if you could pray with them. What if they get upset? I was one time, I remember when I was in like middle school, I was wanting to pray over my meal, and I was embarrassed to do it in front of everybody. So like, I saw another guy that said he did this too, so I didn't feel so bad. But I dropped something on the floor, and I bent over, I was like, thank you, Jesus, for my food, amen. All right. And then it's like, all right, I got it. Nobody noticed. How terrible that I would be afraid. Okay, so sometimes we let fear keep us from doing things. In fact, when I was in college, I started a Bible study. My first time to ever teach in front of anybody. And I remember I invited all my friends to come, and I didn't think very many would come, but 12 came to my dorm. And I had a living room and a bedroom. And so they're all in there ready to get started, and I go in the bedroom, and I close the door, and I'm freaking out. Like, I've never done this. I'm like shaking. I didn't want to do it. I was like, let's just not do it. Let's just give them food and say, never mind, okay? What would happen if I would have just given into my fear and not taught that time? I mean, I would not be here now. I mean, if I couldn't do it from 12, I couldn't do it for all of you, right? But sometimes we let our fears stop us from doing things or cause us to, our fear, what did we say? Steers. Our fear will steer us in the places we don't want to go. There's something else that fear does. It steers us, and it also steals. It steers and it steals. Now, here's what it steals. Happiness. It will take away the joy and the peace that God wants for you to have. If you let fear stay in your life, it will take this. Because when I'm afraid, I can tell you when I'm not happy. When I am like really stressed out and worried and afraid of something, I am not at peace when I'm afraid. Now, I am not somebody that has really dealt with fear. I dealt with worry a lot, and I know they're really similar. To me, fear is just a little bit different. But I wasn't really afraid of stuff. I mean, okay, I was afraid of spiders, heights, like roller coasters. I was scared of them forever. I finally got over that. Public speaking, got over that. And hot girls. I married one, so I guess I got over that. And anyways, but okay, I wasn't really, like, I didn't struggle with fear. That wasn't really a big thing. But I this last, about 2.5 weeks ago, y'all know I had a baby, right? And I experienced some stuff that I have never felt before. So it was Saturday night, and I told a little of this the other day. It was Saturday night, and I was playing a computer game because, dork. I was playing Counter-Strike, and so I come in, and my wife apparently had been in labor the entire time I was playing and didn't tell me. And so I'm like, hey, how are you doing? She goes, well, I've been having contractions every 10 minutes. And I'm like, what? Okay. And so then we kind of go into the process. We start timing them, and they're like 4 minutes apart. And so we start calling people, like, hey, I think we're going to be having the baby soon. And things are going good. And so when you're getting ready to have a baby, they teach you things to do, okay? It's really important that you relax, okay, to help things move along. And so they teach you that you should say, when you're having a pain, like the pain thing, and to say, like, ah, okay, and not ee. Okay, because, like, okay, say e, right? E. Do you feel how tight you are? Now say ah. Do you feel how loose you are? Okay, one is really relaxing, and one's really tight. So what most people do when they're in pain is they go ee. Okay, but they taught us if you go, it helps with the pain. So we're going through the whole process, and she's starting to get in pain, and I'm like, okay, you gotta, and she's like, and we're like doing it together, because she keeps wanting to go like, and I'm like, no, and so we're like doing this whole thing, and she's doing like amazing. So she's got the thing, and we're like awing together, and like I'm keeping her in the zone, and like, then it'll go away, and you're like, okay, about 2 more minutes, another one's coming, and then it's like, okay, here we go, okay, and so she's like, and she's doing it, and it's getting more and more. And so finally we go to the birthing place, and so we're there, and when you get so far along, it starts pretty not that bad. Like it's kind of like a little, ooh, there's something happening. And then, but by the end, it's like, okay. So it's like, we get there, and she's like, she has a contraction, and she's like, and they're like, oh, she must not be that far along because she's doing so well. Well, then it turns out she was actually really far along, and she's just really strong, and they couldn't, she's awesome. She didn't know meds, okay, none at all. And so they didn't realize how far she was, but so she's doing good. I remember things started to get a little more intense because instead of like, it was like, okay, and we're getting better. And then something changed, okay? We kind of moved to another room, and like, she threw up, okay, and then like she moved from like the transition time to birthing time, like pushing time, and this pain hit her, okay. Now I'm looking at her in the face like this, like, come on, honey, and she goes, okay. It was a scream like, okay, if somebody grabbed your lip and ripped it off, okay, how you would scream? Yes, that's what happened. I mean, and like I'm this close to her face, I'm like, oh, good job, honey. keep it low, keep it, oh, okay, okay. And so I'm starting to kind of panic a little bit now, because now like the midwives and stuff, they're like checking the heart rate on the baby, because they put this thing on there so they can hear it, and they're like freaking out, or not, they're not freaking out, I'm starting to freak out. And so then they're like, okay, we got to move you. So they put her on this other bed, and then like they're checking the heart rate, and she's like getting pretty intense now, and then like the baby's heart rate is like 120, 130, and then it was 90. And then they're like, we need to move her, try and get the baby in a better position, because the baby's heart rate started dropping. And I'm like, okay, it's at 70. This is not good, okay? And so like I'm starting to panic a little bit, and I can see like they don't tell you anything's bad, but they're like, all these people like talking to us. So I'm like, why don't you just say it out loud? Because I'm starting to freak out now. And then they came over and they told her that they were going to maybe have to cut her to help the baby come out quicker. So then she had another contraction, and she pushed it out the next one. She was like, no, that ain't happening. Just bloop it, baby. And so And so baby just popped out. And so then I thought, okay, we're making it. We're doing great. They gave us the baby and everything. And so then a little bit later, something happened that just changed everything for me. It was time for her to get up to go to the bathroom, and they kind of clean up, and they have like a bath that you can clean up in and all that. And so she stands up, and I'm going to help her walk, because I knew she'd be really tired. And when she stands up, and all of a sudden her skin turns yellow, like not just pale, but yellow. I've never seen anyone yellow like this, okay? Like the song Red and Yellow, Black and White. That's what they're talking about, pregnant women or something, okay? She just turns yellow, okay? And and then she goes, and her eyes roll back in her head, and she just falls. I mean, we catch her, but she falls back onto the bed, and she's out. And at this moment, I cannot describe to you the panic that is going on inside my brain, okay? Like, I'm freaking out, okay? I'm like, is she dead? I mean, is she dying? Are we going to, what's going to happen right now? And, of course, and then the ladies are all like, and like one lady pops this thing, and like she sniffs it, and she's awake. And it was only like 3 seconds. For me, it was 3 hours, okay? And like she wakes up, and she's like, how long was I asleep? I had a good dream. And I was like, 3 seconds? I was like, oh, it was forever. Anyway, so she was totally fine, but I'm panicking, right? So I pull one of the ladies in the other room. I was like, is she okay? And she's like, she will be. I'm like, that's not what I need to hear. She will be, so she's not? Okay. So the overwhelming feeling when you don't know that the person that you love the most is not okay is crazy. And I have never really felt fear. I mean, I've had family members be really sick, be in the hospital, but never felt that before, that feeling. And I remember when I was in the room with her, I was smiling, and they're like, hey, honey, you're doing great. And finally she got to where she could get cleaned up, and I said, I'm going to go to the bathroom. And I just went in the other room, and I had to sit and be alone and just let it all out, And it was overwhelming, that fear that I had, though. And what I realized is that a lot of people deal with fear all the time, and that they're afraid that my family's going to break up, or I'm afraid that this is going to happen, I'm afraid for my friend, or I'm afraid for this. And some of you are in that fear that I was feeling in those moments, and you're in it on a regular basis in your life, and what it does is it steals from you. It steals your joy, and it steals your peace. And this is true. Jesus does not want you to be in fear in your life that is stealing the joy from you. This is what Jesus said about it. He said, my peace I give you. In other words, Jesus says, hey, I want to give you peace. I do not give to you as the world gives. Now, this is what that means. The world, naturally, you have peace when you're in the world, when everything is perfect, right? If things are great, there's no problems, I have peace. What he says is, I can give you peace even when there are problems. I don't give that kind of peace. I give it different, even when there are problems. And then he says, do not let your hearts be troubled. I can tell you, I have experienced my heart being troubled. And some of you know what I'm talking about. When you're laying in bed and your heart is just so troubled. And then he says, and do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. Even when things are really messed up, even when things look like they could be really bad, even when things could go and you're not sure, he says, do not be afraid. And what I had to learn and what you can learn is this. I don't have to be afraid, even when there is something to be afraid of. Can you repeat this after me? I don't have to be afraid, even when there's something to be afraid of. One more time. I don't have to be afraid, even when there's something to be afraid of. Now, that's something that I had to learn, and it's not always easy to learn. In fact, sometimes I'm just like, how? How can I not be afraid when there's something to be afraid of? How can you, when you are looking at something that could go horribly wrong, not be afraid? How can you not be afraid when you think that if you don't give in to what they're asking, you're going to be looked down on, made fun of? How can you not be afraid in those situations? Well, I could tell you. And there's a story in Matthew chapter 5 that I wanted to share with you. It's really, really simple, short story. It's about a guy, and I probably don't know how to say his name right if I can't say scorpion. But his name is Jairus, I don't know. Jairus, okay? So this guy, and it says that he went to Jesus, and I'm going to look at verse 22. And seeing Jesus, he fell on his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, "My little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and live." Now, I have a little daughter now, and so I can't imagine what he would be feeling if he thought if his daughter was dying. That would be fear. That would be stress, I can tell you that. That would not be a comfortable thing. Now, then what happens? Jesus goes with him. But as he's going along, there's like this huge crowd comes along, and this other lady comes up to be healed, and so he's taking care of her. And while all this stuff is happening, it says, while Jesus was still speaking, some men came from Jairus' house, the synagogue ruler. "Your daughter is dead," they said. "Why bother the teacher anymore?" So they come and they give him even worse news. Okay, now she's actually dead. Now, I can't imagine at that moment how afraid he felt. Is it true? Is she really? Maybe they're wrong. Hopefully they're wrong. But the fear that would come over. And then what Jesus does and says teaches us how to deal with fear. It teaches you and me how to deal with fear. So I wanted to show you what he does and then what he says. He does this. He says, but Jesus ignored their comments. The circumstances don't affect Jesus. He is not overwhelmed or no circumstance is too big for him. He ignored their comments. Okay, she's dead. Just ignore that, okay? That would be hard to ignore, but he ignored that. And said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid." Now, I wonder if he was kind of like, okay, how? And he tells him how in 3 words. In 3 words, he tells him how not to be afraid and how we cannot be afraid and deal with fear. He says, just trust me. The key to overcoming fear, any fear in your life, is this: just trust Jesus. Just trust Jesus. In fact, some translations just say 2 words: only believe. When we trust in him, that is how we overcome fear. And it's the only way to beat fear, is to trust in Jesus. Now, when you are faced with a situation, how do you overcome it? How do you do this? You decide that I believe, I trust that Jesus cares for me and has better things for me, and that this is not too big for him. And if you can trust him, your fear will go down. As your trust in Jesus goes up, your fear will shrink. So when you're in a situation and you got some people pressuring you to do something, and you feel that fear steering you, you make a decision. You know what? I'm going to trust God. I'm going to trust that even if they talk bad about me, they make fun of me, they say things about me when I leave, whatever, no matter, I'm going to trust that if I trust Jesus and do what he says, he's going to take care of it in the end. It's going to be better for me. I'm just going to trust him and do it. That's how you keep fear from steering you in the wrong direction. And how do you keep fear from stealing happiness from you? When you're faced with a situation that is too big, that you don't know how it's going to end, you say, you know what? I'm going to trust Jesus that he's going to take care of me. And when you put your trust in him, suddenly you realize that your fear is something you don't have to hold on to, something that you don't have to let control you. So there was the birth thing, and then I didn't expect this, but I suddenly became terrified all the time because I watched my wife pass out, okay, in front of me. And then when we were at home, I thought every time I heard a noise in the house, I thought she would pass out again and like she was dying in my house. So I'd be in the bed, and she'd be laying in bed, and I'm in the kitchen, and I hear like the Kleenex box fall off the bed. And I come running in, I'm like, "Are you okay?" She's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Oh gosh." And then we have a baby, right? And I started looking at things like how you're supposed to put him in the bed better to make him sleep better. And I started reading about this thing called SIDS, S-I-D-S. Okay, oh, doesn't that sound sweet? SIDS, yeah, sudden infant death syndrome, okay? Like, oh, your baby can instantly die while sleeping. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. So now I'm laying in bed at night for the first like 5 days we have a kid, and if she makes a noise, my wife, I go, okay, she okay? I'm checking her pulse, okay, she's still alive, okay? And then I hear the baby like, I'm like, is she dying? Okay, so I'm like, oh, I didn't sleep for 5 days because I let fear come like completely over me. And then it all came to a head, like the worst. We on Thursday we went to the doctor, right the week after, or 5 or 6 days after the birth, because there were some complications, and we thought we're just gonna have it checked. I bet it's fine. And then he looks at her and he goes, well, it might be okay, or it'll probably be okay, but, and then after the word, he just tells us all this stuff. Infections that can happen and all this, and be in the hospital for days and all da. And as he's talking about all this stuff that could happen to my wife that I love, she could tell you, the blood left my skin. I was as white as a piece of paper. And I was like, I have to sit down, because I was standing next to her. And I sat down, and the doctor looked at me and goes, whoa, I'll be right back. He came back with like all this food. He's like, here's like cookie and some stuff. And I'm like, okay, trying to get my blood sugar back, because I couldn't take it. The thought of something happening to her. And we went down to the car, and we kind of like tried to hold it together, walking through the hospital. We're sitting in there, and we just held hands, and then we just started crying. I mean, both of us just broke down tears, and we were looking at each other, and we felt overwhelmed because, she's gone through all that, and now we're just afraid of what could happen. And I look at her, and I said, I'm probably going to mess this up, but the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. My little baby's making some noise. It's okay. And I knew that because he was with me, I didn't have to fear the evil that was in front of us. And then we prayed together, and we had a little more peace, and we were driving down the road, and I just kept quoting Psalms 23, and there's some more of it, but I just kept quoting that to her, and we kept praying together, and just saying, you know what, we're going to choose to trust God. And what happened was we found peace. Now, I can't say that it was just like instant, that I was perfect, because sometimes it was an hour-by-hour thing where I would decide, you know what, I could feel it coming back, and I would say, you know what, no, I'm going to trust Jesus. And there were times when I was here at work, and I was just become overwhelmed again. And I remember I walked in my office, and I closed the door, and I just said out loud, I said, God, I'm sorry. I repent for being afraid and not trusting you, and I'm going to trust you. And I just over and over again told myself, I trust in Jesus. I told myself this, I don't have to be afraid even when there's something to be afraid of. And some of you are looking at a situation right now, and you say, there is something to be afraid of. And I want you to know you can trust him. I want you to know that if you put your trust in him, that fear will go away. So what we're going to do is we're going to sing a song. It's this song we sang during worship. It's called Trust. And I tell you what, I needed that song this last 2 weeks. I can tell you how many times I sang to myself, Jesus, I will trust you. I will trust you. I know you never fail. I will trust you. And as we sing this song, if you are holding on to some fear, if there's some fear that's holding on to you, I want to ask you to just mean those words when you sing it and be free of that. Also, if you want prayer, you want somebody to believe with you, there will be people at the side of the room to pray with you. But you can be free of fear because you don't have to be afraid, even when there's something to be afraid of. And you can find true peace and joy and be set free of it. Father God, I just thank you for every young person in this room. I pray that they would be free of fear in their life and it won't control them, it won't overwhelm them, and that when it comes, Lord, that they would look to you and know, I can trust Jesus because he loves me and he cares for me, and I can get through this because he has my back and I trust him. And I thank you for that. In Jesus' name I pray.